disclosure of pecuniary interests or any of general nature? Hearing none, we can move on. An agenda was sent out to everyone, and it needs to be approved before we move on to the next step. So I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move that.
Bev, and I see Scott, so we've got that done. And minutes. I don't think there were any minutes thrown together behind this one, were there?
No, there is no minutes. This is a working group, so
Yep.
that's basically our first meeting.
Okay, so I guess as Cynthia points out, this is a working group, and on that basis, I would welcome Denzel Ferguson. It's about time we got you back looking at these things again. I enjoyed your know-how when we were working on this a while ago. I'm glad to see you back in here again.
Thank you.
And as Cynthia says, this is a working committee of the Ag Advisory Committee. So it's within the term to reference of the Ag Advisory Committee, which I think I've had a look at just recently. We've got an opportunity to identify issues that we would be interested in seeing addressed. We can act as a conduit for concerns, etc., and hopefully provide assistance to the consultant and the Mississippi Mills staff. Today in this agenda, we're going to have the opportunity to learn more about the LEAR process from two sources. Now, two sources according to our agenda. Do we still have John O'Neill scheduled to show up? Does anybody know that?
Sorry, Lauren, that is just correspondence from John O'Neill.
It's just correspondence. I'm sorry.
It's just correspondence from John. John is not available for today.
Okay, good. That's great. But were we getting a presentation from the consultant / staff side on this?
Yeah, you can turn it over to JL Richards. I think Gabrielle's going to be the first one to give us an update. Then we also have Tim Chatter. Does the members know Tim? Tim is a senior planner with JL Richards. Mark is not available today. Mark is on holidays. So Tim is substituting. I just felt it was important to start a process. Yeah.
No, I think the important thing is to ensure that we know what we are up to date on and embark from there. So, Gabrielle, why don't we give you the floor at this time?
Sure, that sounds good. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. If you want to let me know when you could see the presentation, that would be great. Just put it on full screen here.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'll do today is just walk through the LEAR approach that was developed for Mississippi Mills in terms of the different measures that were used, how we came to arrive at those measures and the general scoring process. I would ask that questions be held at the end. I think that's how we wanted to approach it, but I would be happy to answer questions, and as would Tim after the presentation. So this is generally the outline. We're going to look at guiding objectives, basically what motivated us or what objective we had in mind behind the development of this LEAR, what lands are and aren't included in the analysis of the LEAR, the different LE and AR scoring measures that were used, as well as the evaluation units used. So that's basically just the land units that were used for the analysis. Then we're going to look at the different considerations that went into the selection of the land evaluation and area review factors, including how the scoring for each one of those factors was broken down. And then we'll look at some preliminary scores and what was scored above the threshold, including some land that is being recommended for designation, but is subject to change as we review the general approach. So first, the guiding objective is to identify and protect agricultural lands through the identification of good soils and other area-related factors. So this is generally how the LEAR is broken down between area review and land evaluation factors, and I'll get into that in the next slides. So as per OMAFRA guidance, the only lands that were excluded from the evaluation are those that are present in settlement areas. So that could be either a residential subdivision or a village area. And this is just as per OMAFRA guidelines. So there can't be lands within these areas that are designated. But it's also important to note that these areas don't impact the assessment or the evaluation of surrounding lands. So that is to say that if you have lands that are bordering these village or residential areas, they're not scored lower as a result of their proximity to settlement areas. So that's just something that's important to note. And that's also stressed quite strongly by OMAFRA. So that's something that we followed in our analysis. Another important point before we get into the factors is how lands were divided and evaluated. So OMAFRA generally uses the raster approach. And what this means is cells of a given area. So let's just say 100 meters by 100 meters. And it basically just divides all lands into equal sized squares or cells. But we opted for the land ownership parcel approach. And that is just to facilitate designation. So we wanted to see that entire properties were or were not designated, because this creates issues with land development and planning at later points, so after the lands are designated. And so basically, the difference is that you'll see either high or low scoring areas within one land ownership parcel, or you just get a general score for one parcel individually. And so though this approach is a little bit different than what OMAFRA generally does, the land ownership parcel approach is accepted by OMAFRA, and they've given us the okay on this front. And so just from a planning standpoint, like I said, it does really facilitate a designation generally. So now on to the LE and AR criteria. So LE stands for land evaluation, and this looks at the Canada Land Inventory soil capability classification. So that just looks at soils capability for agriculture. And we'll get into how this is broken down and divided later on. And then the second aspect of the LEAR is the area review. So these are other factors that have to do with the general area or context that would inform a given area's capability for agriculture. So this considers everything but soil capability. And so how we decided to move forward with the division of points and scoring is that 70% of the score would be associated to soil capability. So that's the land evaluation component. And the remaining 30% of all points would be associated to the area review component. So the OMAFRA guidance is that at least 50% of the score is associated or attributed to the land evaluation portion. However, there's no requirement that indicates this specific division. So as long as the land evaluation component is scored or given 50% of the weight of the score or more, it's all right. And we decided to go with 70% of the score going to soil capability, because we believe that this is kind of the leading factor in identifying lands that can support agriculture and would be very much aligned for agriculture. And these area review components, the contextual components, are kind of a secondary consideration to soil capability. So that's why we only attributed, sorry about that, 30% of the score to the area review factors. So to begin with the land evaluation factor, we see here that the CLI score is divided or classifies soils from 1 to 7, 1 being the most capable or suitable lands for agriculture, and 7 being the least. And as per OMAFRA guidelines, we also included organic soils to be equivalent to class 2 soils. So the second strongest or highest class of soil. And so this is some new guidance that OMAFRA provided, and we decided, or we listened to and incorporated in our model. And so you see the scores here, and basically there's 70 out of 100 points that are attributed to this LE factor. So a total of 70 points can be attributed to a given parcel based on their soil capability. So you see here that if you are a class 1 soil, you get the full 70 points, and it goes increasingly down to 0 as the soil capability class is lower. And now for the area review factors, there's a lot more decisions that can be made here as opposed to the LE factor, given that OMAFRA requires you to use CLI data for that evaluation, and it's relatively objective, and there's not too much interpretation that can be done there. But the AR factors were selected out of a range that are generally used in the LEARs. So a critical piece here that we considered was not double counting or using different factors that would be considered not mutually exclusive. So a good example of that would be, let's just say, the percentage of the parcel that was used for farming and another measure such as farming infrastructure both being used. Those two factors could be considered to count or account for the same sort of agricultural factor, and therefore including both in the LEAR would be kind of double counting. So that's something that we tried to avoid. And so because of that, we chose parcel size, conflicting land uses, and the percentage of a parcel currently being farmed as our 3 LEAR criteria. And in the next slides, I'll review each one of those in more depth and describe how they were scored or what breakdown was used. So as mentioned earlier, the area review component makes up 30% of the total score, which is 30 points total out of 100. And each one of the factors can receive or be scored up to 10 points. So that the 30 points available for AR factor scores was evenly distributed across the 3 selected factors we chose. So for the first factor we used, that is parcel size, we decided on this breakdown. Before OMAFRA provided guidance, the largest parcel size that was used was much larger than the 81 or more acres. But with OMAFRA guidance, we kind of made the parcel sizes smaller to provide higher scores to parcels that were smaller. And what you see here is just kind of a breakdown of the area of farms in Mississippi Mills. So essentially, there's about 15% or so of parcels that would kind of give you a score lower than that 8 range. So you see that, you know, this really isn't excluding too many parcels from getting a high score. It's relatively common for parcels within the Mississippi Mills area to score 8 or above in this factor. But basically this breakdown of scores was approved by OMAFRA, and they think that this breakdown doesn't overstate or understate the importance of parcel size to agriculture. So that's something we worked with OMAFRA to come to. So the second factor is conflicting land uses. Since the original draft of the LEAR, this factor has changed a lot too. We used to consider the proximity of parcels to settlement areas as a way to evaluate the parcels for suitability. So if they were close, they were given a lower score, but as per OMAFRA guidance, we got rid of that. So now no settlement areas are considered in the scoring whatsoever. All we're looking for is factors that lie outside of settlement areas, so not within village boundaries, not within residential subdivisions that are considered conflicting. So that includes open space, industrial, and residential. However, we are still looking to review this with OMAFRA, as they don't think that open spaces should be considered. They should have a neutral effect on agriculture, but this is something that we still have to review with OMAFRA and we're working on. But for now, this is generally how it looks. So around each parcel, a 750-meter radius is drawn, and we look at how many conflicting land uses fall within that radius. So the more conflicting land uses there are, the lower the parcel scores. So if you have 26 or over, you get a score of 0. But if you have fewer conflicting land uses within that radius, you score anywhere between 2 and 10. And the final area review factor is active farming. So this factor also went through a bit of change. Before, we had more of a binary approach where if a given parcel was 50% or more was used for agriculture, then it would get the full 10 points. And if it was used, if 50% or less was used for agriculture, then it would receive 0. But as per MAFRA guidelines, we went into a more in-depth and reflective of the reality type approach to evaluating active farming. So using the cropland data, we were able to determine what percentage of property ownership parcels were being used for farming. So we used the property boundaries provided by the MPAC and the agricultural coverage used by the cropland data set to determine the full coverage. So we see here that you really aren't penalized at all. The scoring that you get per parcel very much lines up with the percent of coverage. So if 0% of the parcel is used for agriculture, then you get a score of 0. But as coverage increases, so do the amount of points a parcel would receive. So this is very much a more fair or neutrally stated approach than was that binary approach. So it does allow for more points to be attributed to parcels, which is kind of a more fair and favors agricultural designation a little bit more, which is something that OMAFRA was looking for and we implemented. So to start, I think we'll go here first. So this is generally what the initial results showed. So this isn't equivalent to designation or doesn't suggest designation, but just shows how parcels scored using that 66 plus threshold. So what we did is we looked at a lot of parcels that were very favorable for agriculture, and this was using staff knowledge and local knowledge of the area. And what we did is we made sure that those very favorable parcels were included and surpassed that threshold amount, and those that weren't suitable fell under the threshold. And using that and doing a few GIS tests, we were able to come to the conclusion that 66 plus would be a good threshold for to suggest or recommend designation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a parcel is designated or not. So this is basically just showing what parcels or what properties scored 66 plus overall. And I'll just switch back here to show basically total scores regardless of whether or not they surpass that threshold. So you can just see that the darker parcels are scoring 80 on 100 or plus. And those that are lighter score lower than that. So this is generally how the breakdown of scores looks like. And then finally, this is to date what we are recommending for agricultural designations. So as you can see, it does follow the general pattern of this 66 plus threshold, but it also does consider additional factors. So OMAFRA recommends that 250 hectare blocks are designated. This is just to create this continuity between agricultural parcels. So more parcels were actually are being recommended for designation than those that were scoring above the threshold. So this just shows that, you know, even with the LEAR score, providing these scores to the parcels, that isn't necessarily a make or break for designation. There are other factors that are being considered. You can also see that there are some high scoring parcels that weren't designated, and this is just because they don't fit that AMAFRA recommended 250 hectare block that they want to see designated. So we see that some areas are filled in, some are excluded, just to include or just to consider that 250 hectare block area that they're looking for. And some other reasons include, if some parcels are already designated as significant wetlands, those sort of areas are also excluded because they're already given a designation that doesn't correspond to agriculture. So for now, this is all that I had to present, but I'd happy to flip through some slides and answer some questions that anyone has. Oh, Lauren, I think you might be on mute.
You're right. Thanks, Gabrielle. Are there questions on this specific presentation? I guess there are. Denzel as our new addition.
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, I have a couple of questions, if it's permissible. One under your AR factor, conflicting land uses. And you had made the comment 750 meters. How does that compare with the MDS requirements?
So it actually is the same as the type A land use consideration. However, our initial approach to conflicting land uses very much mirrored the MDS requirements and calculations. However, OMAFRA didn't want us to use that approach necessarily because they're not exactly used or they don't exactly serve the same purpose, and therefore we shouldn't model after a calculation that has a different overall objective. But the area being considered is the same, the 750 meters. And OMAFRA is also okay with that 750 meter radius is generally the area being affected by a given parcel. And
you think 750 meters is fairly excessive or no? That's pretty significant.
I think it is significant, but what also has to be considered is the amount of conflicting land uses. So with each of the measures or factors that we use, we do test them as well. So we see, what percentage of parcels are getting to say a high number of conflicting land uses versus those that aren't, and seeing how they score under each individual factor. And so I think we found that this was appropriate just because there is a great range of how parcels were scoring. There was a fair amount of parcels that were scoring high and had few conflicting land uses, and there were others that had higher numbers of conflicting land uses. So we didn't think that this breakdown would penalize parcels too much. However, it is important to note that we are still talking with OMAFRA about this breakdown. So we might change these ranges up a little bit to ensure that it doesn't kind of over or under state the importance of conflicting land uses or the impact of conflicting land uses on parcels.
Okay, if I have one more question, Mr. Chair, if that's permissible.
Yep.
Under the threshold results, again, and when Mark presented it, there were no questions, obviously. It was a meeting that we didn't ask questions. But the 250 hectare block, again, is that not excessive for Eastern Ontario? And I've asked this question, and it relates back to the original discussions back years ago, specifically for the PPS, as to why there was not more discussion specifically to identifying 4 separate areas of the province into different blocks. And I would say, if you looked at Lanark counties and Renfrew counties, is far significantly different than the Golden Horseshoe, where it's not hard to find 500 hectares without a tree out of a rock or anything else. So I've always questioned that, but I just wonder again, is the 250 hectares a block? That's pretty significant for Lanark County.
Right, I see what you mean. I think this may be more appropriate for OMAFRA, just given that we're sort of held to this standard or because of OMAFRA. So perhaps Tim may be able to speak more to that, but I know that this is kind of, like you said, you know, it doesn't really consider which area of Ontario is being analyzed, but essentially this is just kind of a blanket requirement for all of Ontario municipalities. So that's just something that we had to follow given OMAFRA guidance.
And
Thank you.
Denzel, just to be clear, yes, that has been discussed with OFA, with Ag and Food, with the various county councils, and unsuccessfully, to be quite blunt. We've had to use that in Renfrew, which just got approved. We had to use it in SD&G, and quite frankly, SD&G, it's easy to get 250 hectare blocks. There's lots of ag land down there, but they wouldn't budge on the block size. They wanted to be consistent from the provincial side. If we had a really good rationale to look at it, they might think about it, but there was nothing that was obvious to us that we could argue.
Yeah, thank you for that, Scott. I guess, is it all right, Mr. Chair, if I can speak back to that?
Yeah, I think we got to move on quick, but let's close up on this one because it is a major
No
question.
problem at all, but I certainly follow everything in Renfrew County, and they were successful in obviously getting changes to the official plan and also to the PPS. So I just question again, and I know it's kind of well after the fact of the PPS, but I think that's a one that we should certainly look at in detail.
I think, Denzel, you've got the exact point here, which is the outcomes of the LEAR. Because what we need to look at is how we do the analysis of all of this information.
Right.
And that's where a lot of the boots on the ground pieces come into our effect, which is, I think, our next step with the committee.
Okay.
Without
No,
having to
that's great.
tackle the 250, I think we can do a lot of work to try and understand what your thoughts are before we get to that challenge.
Sure. No, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good. Bev, did you still have a question? Bev?
Yeah,
there.
yeah, just trying to find my mute button. Yeah, I think, yeah, thank you, Denzel, for that, because I think that whole business of the 250 hectares, that just does not work for us. And I think it's worth us really pursuing that whole issue. However, if it's boots on the ground or whatever, certainly farmers who I've talked to laugh whenever they hear 250 hectares, to be perfectly honest with you. The other thing that's a big concern is you were mentioning that parcels not recommended because they do not fit the 250 acre block. I have a hard time with that. If we have good agricultural land, we should be recognizing it in some way. This also falls into the whole issue about there's a lot of farmers out there who have, you know, good land, poor land, and they're saying, why can I not do a third severance? And I think that's something we're going to hear a lot as we talk to people. Why are we, you know, going by these kind of false rules or restrictions? So that's all I have to say right now. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much. Should we be accepting this report as part of the meeting? Cynthia?
Brenda has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed her hand. Brenda.
No problem. So I don't want to dwell on the whole 250 hectare thing. One thing that really concerns me about that, as well as what Denzel and Bev have said, is that we still don't know where these 250 hectare blocks start and end. So it's kind of, to me, it's a bit of an imaginary block as well. We're told at one of the first meetings that there's no record of, you know, where these blocks all are. So that's confusing to me. And the other thing, talking about conflicting land uses. So for example, when we're looking at Rose Meadows and the little subdivision like that, is that considered like one conflicting land use, or are we looking at that as, you know, there's more than 20 homes there, so it's more than 20 conflicting uses? I wonder how those numbers actually hit.
So I could speak to both of those. So for the 250 hectare blocks, maybe that's something that we can ask our GIS expert to outline. This is something that he does visually and creates layers in ArcGIS, but I'm sure that he could make that visible just as kind of a reference piece to show how the 250 hectare blocks are created. But I'm sure, I do know that he has a process of doing that, but just given that the rest of us aren't on ArcGIS, it's kind of hard to explain, but that's something that I could get from him perhaps as a reference map, as well as maybe a quick description, but that's something that Tim and I can discuss and perhaps bring up with our GIS expert. When it comes to residential subdivisions, it's considered a settlement area, and therefore it's not actually considered a conflicting land use. It's just kind of blocked out from the analysis altogether. So basically the OMAFA reasoning behind that is they don't want established settlement areas to have an impact on abutting or nearby agricultural or potential ag lands. So because basically they don't want to create these sort of halos around settlement areas where agricultural land can't exist. They don't want these development and residential pressures, you know, and just general development pressures to impact ag land designation. So when it comes to a residential subdivision, it's considered a settlement area and it's not considered a conflicting use whatsoever. It's just kind of blocked out from the analysis. So as seen on the 66 plus score threshold map, you see that Edmonton and some of these smaller subdivisions are just kind of grayed or whited out. And that just kind of goes to show that they're not considered in the analysis whatsoever and don't negatively impact abutting agricultural or potential agricultural lands.
And one more quick thing, if I can. As far as the active farming factors, one thing you had said, Gabrielle, was that if it's not currently being used for ag, or if land isn't currently being used for ag, then it's not considered ag land. Just because it's not currently being used for ag doesn't mean that it doesn't have that capability. And vice versa, there's lots of land that is considered ag land, but isn't being used for active farming because it's stony and it really can't be farmed. So I think there's some issues that way as well.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think the concern sort of goes both ways, where there is this desire to acknowledge lands that are currently being used for agriculture and see that as kind of a value. But you have to keep in mind that this currently being used as agriculture factor and score only makes up 10% of the total score. And the threshold is 66, right? So, you know, when the soils or the LE factor makes up 70% of the total score alone, it really doesn't penalize parcels that aren't being used for agriculture too much if they are in other ways suitable. So let's just say they have capable soils, they're not around a lot of conflicting land uses, and they're a large parcel, they're easily going to score above that 66 threshold anyway. So they will be, I think, properly acknowledged, just given all the other attributes that make them suitable, if that makes sense.
All right. I would like to I'd like to keep us moving on here. I do have a question, Cynthia. The OMAFRA technical guidance, that's a document we've had before, isn't it?
I've never circulated it, Lauren. I think it was what I thought the committee should have it as information, just because it did form part of the JL Richards presentation.
Yeah.
So I've listed it separately. And I don't know if there's any questions with respect to that, or.
Well, I'm just wondering, again, for time, we've started a new working group here, and we've focused in on kind of the details of a presentation. I was hoping we might spend a few minutes looking at what is it that this working group would like to accomplish. And, you know, are there areas where we can help the consultant? Are there areas where we can gain more knowledge on the level of concern that's out there right now? Can we just have a little bit of an open table for that for a couple of minutes here and see where you'd like to go?
Absolutely. And I think that sort of falls under next steps.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
certainly can move to that.
Just before we jump to that, Lauren, I just want to, the OMAFRA documentation we sent you,
Yeah.
I'll tell you that hasn't changed since for all intents and purposes, it has never changed since they did their first MDS, their first LEAR guidelines back in 2002.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's for all intents and purposes, we've been using that for over 20 years.
Well, there's also was a response by John to your study that we've seen.
Yes. Yeah. And that was how Gabrielle came up with those amended recommendations that
Yeah.
we've got in our report right now.
Yeah. So I guess going back to a kind of an open table for a minute on ideas on this committee itself. Brenda? If it's off the top, we'll wait for somebody else.
Oh, sorry, I should find my mute button. I really feel that one thing that I would like to see come out of this is that there's a more hands-on or boots on the ground approach when we're looking at some of this. I get the maps and everything, I understand them. I don't agree with them in a lot of cases. And I think that's one thing that really needs to come out is the people with the farmers in the area and soil analysts and all of those groups really need to look at the actual land, what it's actually being used for, and use more of a localized approach in some circumstances.
So I interpret you're looking at some sort of a capability of actually reviewing the parcels with respect to the map so that we know that we're right or we know that we're not right. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Well, that I know we need like an understood approach like this. So yes, exactly what you said, Lauren. But in addition to that, you know, as people are looking to build new structures or new homes or whatever, turn some land that's not being used for ag into ag land, we need to be able to be fluid with that process and not just look at this.
I'm without questioning what you're saying, because I agree with what you're saying. We probably will have trouble getting a full knowledge of the land on these maps by ourselves. We may need to recognize that we need to ask some people either outside of the meeting or in a meeting for their concerns and their input and utilize that. Is that kind of the things we should be looking at?
Yes.
That's good. That's good. Anybody else?
Yeah, for me, my motivation getting involved with this is it's entirely a food sovereignty issue, and I can't overstate that I think how important it is to preserve our agricultural potential, and I also think it needs saying that I'm impressed with the work that our consultants have done. Their thoroughness and their methodology has gone a long way to putting me at ease with this. When this first came up, I was a little alarmed. This was a way to sort of flip a bunch of stuff over into developers' hands, and I see that that's not the case, and I'm reassured by that. But at the same token, I'd echo Denzel's concern about the 250 hectare blocks, because that takes Cedar Hill right off the map, and that's a intensively farmed agricultural area that I'd say is very important in our community, and it would be a shame to let that slip through our fingers. So it would be nice to talk to some people on the ground. I know I've heard a lot of concern expressed in Cedar Hill that that we're kind of getting swept under the carpet here. So it would be nice to hear some of those voices, and I can think of a few who'd be glad to sound in given the opportunity.
Okay, good. Bev?
Yeah, so, yeah, thank you. So I guess one of the things for me, like we're all concerned about the 250 hectare plots. So how can I explain to farmers why we're going with land ownership parcels versus the OMAFRA approach of the square meters? Like, why did we make that decision? And is it the right decision for this area or not? If someone could just give me some thoughts on that.
Is that something that we need to add to Lauren's list of what we need?
Yeah, I think so. It is a specific, but it's a specific recognizing the people that are on the street asking the questions. That's for sure.
Yes.
I the impression that it was kind of it made logistical sense, because if you use the raster method, you're going to have raster blocks that might span 2 or even 3 parcels, and just sort of the admin that goes behind that to me gets pretty complicated. I thought keeping it in the parcels was kind of neat and tidy, and when you break it up by the raster, that part of your lot is designated as prime and part of it isn't, it gets a little confusing. It just seemed to me neat and tidy. I like that was my understanding the 2 times I've heard it presented.
Bev?
Yeah, I agree. It is neat and tidy, but I go back to those people who have some prime land and then have some land that's just rough rock. You know, it might be a 50-50 split. It might be a 40-60, who knows, who are really anxious to get some value out of that land by severing another lot. So, and you know, it's not necessarily my opinion, but it's what's been told. I get calls from people saying, how can I go about severing a lot? And also, don't change me from rural to agriculture because I want to sever a lot, you know. So I just think it's worth a discussion. Like, I hear it's neat and tidy, but is that the only reason we're using it, or is there another better reason?
I think the other part of that is, as far as the parcels go, when you have adjoining lands, you either have to have them in 2 different names or it's all one parcel. So there is a lot of ag land out there that's not parceled together. It's technically the same family, husband and wife and whatever that owns it all. But it is all separate parcels. So that information coming in from that impact isn't really all that accurate in my view.
I think one thing that we would like to stress is that at this point in the LEAR process, I think we are looking for feedback from landowners about these concerns, so that we can look into it and see whether it makes sense to either designate or not designate based on what the property landowner has to say. I think another point is that, you know, this LEAR and the designation that follows it wouldn't come into effect right away. So if there were property owners that were looking to do consents, I think that would still be possible if they were to get on that, you know, within a short time. I did have one more point. Let me think about this. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's it for now. The last point I wanted to mention is that I don't know what the current numbers are anymore. It's been a few months since we reviewed these numbers, but the designation that we're proposing at this moment doesn't actually affect the severance rights of too many property owners. I think it removes severance rights of something like 20 property owners, and it gives severance rights to about 20 as well. So there aren't that many properties that are being affected in that way. And that's something that, you know, when you're looking at the severance rights of about 40 properties altogether, you know, some losing, some gaining, that's something that we could address with the individual property owners, and they will get notice about. But there isn't this dramatic change in what property owners do or don't have severance rights. So that's just something I wanted to add.
Yeah,
Okay.
one of the exercises from our GIS group is to make sure we've understood where all the consents or severances have happened. So we've got a good track record of that. That's available for other people.
All right.
So I think Bev had another question there, Lauren.
Yep. Go ahead, Bev.
Yeah, just really, well, I have a question and a comment. My comment is just to be clear, because we are now starting to talk about agricultural land, there are people out there who have already used 2 severances. Then they may have rural designation now, who would like a 3rd severance. So that, I'm just saying that's going to come up. Why can I not have another severance? This land is no good. So it's just a comment, but we need to be aware that that's going to be part of what we're going to be coming up against. The other question I get asked is the GIS, you know, the numbers that come up with the GIS, how can people, how do people know those numbers are accurate? What have we done to you know, prove that they're accurate? Because there's some people saying to me, well, that certainly can't be the number of my land, you know, depending on maybe where they want it to be. And also, how come we can get numbers out in the middle of the river? Just questions.
Okay. Denzel, I've missed you. Please.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Appreciate. Well, I think you asked at the start what you feel at working group. And I think obviously we have to work very close with the new, not the new one necessarily, but the OP amendment specifically to rural development, where it addresses some of the concerns that Bev has, which is severances, as we move forward to see where rural will expand. And that's a you know, right under review now. And then the GIS and the MVCA mapping of wetlands. I don't know how accurate that is either, because again, you get a lot of discussion. Well, why am I being designated as a specific wetland when in fact it dries up, as we've seen in some of the other areas, or whatever. So I think there should maybe be some discussion about that. But again, Lauren, I don't know how high a level we take this, or where do we really start with it. But should we, and that's a question, should we be doing a SWOT analysis specifically for the working group to see where we're going to go with this before we get into everything else? I don't know that. That's just a question.
Yeah, good. I don't know the answer to that one either. I think the more I looked at where we are in this meeting, I think a lot of good work has been done. A lot of good logical work has been done. In my references, I've felt that the advisory committee kind of was a good visibility piece and allowed for insurance that landowners had a place to express their views and have them looked at. And I'm thinking that that's something we need to feel, at least I think it's something we need to feel we've accomplished as this group, is to ensure that if we're reflecting views into the consultant of the municipality, that they are reflective of what's in the field. And you know, I think we have some good expertise here, but I think we need to make sure there's opportunities to either talk to or receive information from others as we go along here. So you know, I kind of keep that communications as probably an important objective for the group. And once we know we've made ourselves visible and things are flowing, then I think we can work on some specific questions as well. But I think we need to treat ourselves a bit of from a 40,000 foot mark, first of all, and just see, are there things we should do now to ensure that by the 1st of September or the end of September, we've got our job done. Bev.
Just as part of that, Lauren, I'm wondering if this committee should be receiving the comments to date so far that planning has received in regard to the LEAR. Like, it might help us with a bit of a starting point. The other thing is, I think we need to add some more expertise to our committee, and I'm thinking of the various agricultural groups. Like, I know the OMAFRA representative for this area said to me, every area that she's ever worked with, they've always added an OMAFRA rep to their LEAR committee, because first of all, they have a fairly wide knowledge of the areas, but they also have expertise within which can help us inform our thoughts and decisions too.
I'm going to take an opportunity, but only with Cynthia listening to me, to make sure I'm saying the right thing. We are right now an Ag Advisory Committee that's turned itself into a working group for the LEAR to address some of the issues, but to stay within the objectives of our own Ag Advisory Committee. To add members to our committee right now means we need to advertise, ensure that we've got lots of time to choose and bring them in. I think we talked about the fact we could bring them in as speakers, or to bring their view to our meetings without deputizing them as members. That's where I think we stand. Bev, you're muted.
Yeah, I shouldn't have used to join the committee. I guess I'm thinking more ad hoc members, like I think we can bring in speakers, but I also think there's some people who I understood from our discussion earlier, they couldn't be part of our committee, but they could be ad hoc members, and maybe Cynthia could just comment on that.
Bev, can you give me an example of what you would say an ad hoc committee?
Well, I'm thinking of representatives from our various Ag committees in the area, like the group that Scott belongs to, and he may be their representative because he certainly is well versed, or our Ontario Federation of Agricultural Representatives, should, someone from there. I'm not talking, or our OMAFRA representative. Should that person be an ad hoc, that we that is informed on how we're moving along? I'm just asking the question.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to echo what Lauren said. I think my understanding was we would bring them in as delegations. And so I need direction from the committee to say, well, can we have the next meeting? We would like our OMAFRA Zone 6 representative there. So I would extend an invitation to, I think, Deb Napton, to see if she would be available, and try and sort of, structure an agenda around our delegations.
Bev?
Yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the way I was thinking. I'm also like, I don't know, do we need a representative from Soil and Crops Association? I don't know. Is anybody a member? Is that value? Certainly, I think like the OFA and those type of committees, I do think that we need to bring them in, at least inform them what we're doing.
Okay, Cynthia, there's nothing wrong with me calling a group of identified names after this meeting and seeing if they're interested in coming in for presentation / discussion. I can do that.
Yes.
So that's I think that brings us around to saying, if that's something we think we need it to be important, and I think it was. I think it would be something we should be discussing today. Should we take a few minutes and do a quick list that at least gets minds going, and there'll be other ones thought of later, but we can give a call or send a note or whatever to various people. Bev, who are you talking about? You're talking about Deb Napton for sure. I think when you're muted. You're muted, Bev.
I'm thinking about Deb Napton for sure, and if it's not her, she would know someone who should come from OFA. I'm sure Scott will have some ideas from his organization. Soil and crop, I don't know, Denzel, you worked with this group in the past. Do you know any sort of experts that we should be inviting in?
I would certainly recommend that, and along that same line is Bruce Hudson. He's chair of the Empire OFA, and I think JLR went to that group as well to get addresses for the various farming communities or farmers rather within the area. So I think both of those, Lanark, which I think Deb is representing, and the Empire one, and again Bruce being the soil and crop as well.
Yeah.
I think it certainly would add to our discussions and maybe extend it to the point of appreciation for that, and really where we're going to head with it, because I think we're in for a long term here, a long haul, as far as getting to the end of it. It's not going to be an easy road, I don't think, with a lot of discussion.
Yeah, and I think I'd add to that, Denzel, thank you for that. I think that this is not a quick and dirty exercise. If we're going to do it, it's worth doing right. So thank you for that comment.
Lauren?
Yes. Oh,
Merlin.
hey.
Merlin
Hi,
here.
Merlin. I'm Merlin. I wondered if that was you. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's me. Camera's not working, probably a good thing. I even though I know her very well, I can't really say that Deb would definitely be on, but I'm sure she's interested.
Yeah, I have spoken to her on this.
Okay, great. She's actually just a field rep for the OFA, for the Ottawa, Carleton, Lanark, Renfrew, and Arnprior regions. So, you know, there's our county OFA you can talk to. There's soil and crop, definitely we should talk to as well in the county. I think that's Wes Thomas, the president. And go from there. Definitely Bruce Hudson, because the Arnprior district is part of the Pakenham region. So, you know, definitely guys like that, people like that for sure.
Yeah. National Farmers Union and CFFO. Do people have instant contact for them?
The local chapter head for NFU changed very recently. I don't know him. I don't know him personally. I could certainly reach out to him. I do know that our NFU membership in this municipality is Spartan, but I can definitely get a name to you either later today or first thing in the morning.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great.
And Lauren, I tried really hard to get a name for the Christian Federation, whatever, CFO. But you know something, on the 8th line, I noticed someone has up a sign for them. So I'm going to drive over there and drive into that house.
That's Grant Martin.
Who is it?
That's Grant Martin from the Cedar Hill Christmas Tree Farm.
Okay, so if I go in there, I can talk to him.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can give you his number if you like, Bev.
Oh, that's even better. Thank you. I'll get it from you.
I'll send you an email.
Yeah, please do. And I'd like to set up a bit of time to talk to you about another issue. So that's
Sure.
all good. Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome.
And Bev, if you don't have any luck, if Grant doesn't know who to get in touch with, I know a few clients who are CFFO for 12 years. So I can talk to them too and find out if they know someone.
Okay. That was interesting, Cynthia. Now we got to figure out what to do from here. If we have a next meeting of this group, how soon should it be? We work backwards on it. 1 month, 2 weeks?
So I'm going to help you out.
I know you are.
So I'm going, as of tomorrow, I'm on holidays. I come back July 12th for a week. So we can have something towards the end of the week. If you think that's, we can get a meeting set up. Then I go on holidays again, and I'm back August the 22nd. If not, then I can I can talk to Ken, and Ken can take over for me. We can get something done, organized for towards the end of July the 12th. That would be awesome. Maybe on a Thursday or Friday.
What?
Thursday is the only day of the week that totally doesn't work for me, but I can do any other day of the week.
And that's the week of July 12th. Thursday doesn't work. Anybody else doesn't work for July 12th?
Good with me, Lauren.
What's that?
July 12th, that week's good with me, Lauren. Merlin.
It is good with you? Okay, thanks,
Yep.
Merle.
So the purpose of the present, so would we have JL Richards come and do the similar presentation, Lauren?
I'm wondering if, no, I'm not sure why we would, Cynthia, but clarify your thing. I mean, Gabriel's done a really good presentation here. These people have had a chance to look at it. I'm thinking we could spend part of the meeting with some of the representatives we've discussed here coming and letting us know what they're hearing or what they're concerned about. And we could spend part of the meeting with Gabrielle or whoever they want to throw into the pen the next time. Sorry, Gabrielle, that's with respect I say that. And address some questions there. So we're trying to get input on a public consult, at least input from concerned groups, and some time to address the concerns of this committee. Bev.
Just two things. I think Danny was trying to get your attention maybe, but also if they're not going to do a if we're not going to have Gabrielle do a presentation to these people, we should at least maybe forward them the PowerPoint so they have the salient points. As a start.
Yeah, no, I think if there are ones in there that really need a presentation, well, we'll have to consider that and maybe change the context here. But I think we're into some quick phone calls to find out who is interested in, has anything to bring, and whether they need a presentation or not.
Gabrielle, I'll ask you because I'm not sure the answer. Did we post all of this publication information on the website for the municipality already as a result of the OP work?
I believe we have, but I'll check in with Mark to ensure like the most up-to-date presentation is available, because we've made multiple presentations now and we've been updating as we have received OMAFR guidance. So I'll make sure it's the most up-to-date version.
So Lauren, I do believe it's available already on the website, and if it's not, we'll make sure the current one's there.
Okay, that's fair enough. Now, so Denzel, sorry.
Yes, thank you. I will not be available. Council is off for the month of July. Not that that happens, but I'm trying to get some farm work done so I can get back to meetings in August. So I will not be available. That's immaterial though. Thank you.
But Cynthia, won't they pay him overtime if he comes in?
Yeah.
And you know what? It's okay to set, because I do respect council has had a very busy meeting. So I do respect in, if you want to do early August, that's absolutely fine, and can take over.
Grudgingly accept that. Well, does July 12th sound too soon, or what do people think? Bev?
I think it's soon enough. And I'm with Denny. Gee, I can always use an extra day to do some farm work. But having said that, I also consider this as urgent. But I guess how urgent is it? Would August? I know we have a bit of a timeline of trying to have it all finished up this fall. I think we're dreaming about that. So maybe it's more sensible to take a little bit more time and let everybody get a bit better prepared. and then come back. Otherwise, July 12th is less than 2 weeks away, and it's.
Yeah, I know. When are you back, Cynthia?
When I come back would be August the 22nd.
Okay, gang, is that too long?
I think it's too long, but keep in mind that I don't have to be here. I can get Ken to schedule. Ken can do this.
I
Okay,
feel that August or July, if we're thinking about the week of July 12th, July 16th is the Friday. I think that would be an appropriate date because first thing we need to do is get some more guidance and information, and then waiting until August 22nd to get together again makes sense. Once we have that information that we can all go away and do some work on it and have a better idea of what we want to do from there.
So may I offer a suggestion? Why don't between now and July the 12th, if the committee members can provide me with a list of who they would like to seek additional input from with their email addresses. And what I'll do is I'll send them out Gabrielle's recent presentation that she did today with a suggested meeting date in August. Is that okay, Lauren? You're on mute, Lauren.
probably a good idea because I'm trying to figure out what I heard from you. July 12th would be, sorry, can you repeat what you said? Somehow I lost track.
So I'm wondering if members could provide me with a list of additional people, agencies that they would like to seek input from. And once on July 12th, when I come back, I can send them a quick email, attach Gabriella's most recent PowerPoint presentation to them with a little bit of background information, maybe direct them to our website for additional information, then have a meeting in August.
There you go. It did sound sensible. And when in August? You're not back till, you said the 20.
I'm not back until the 22nd, but it's up to the committee members. Ken can also act as staff resource. I don't have to be here.
Okay, I'm looking for guidance on this, everybody. I don't want this to go too long. We're at June 28th now. We get something out on the 12th. We could go the end of July, early August for our next meeting.
Early August sounds good to me.
Okay. August 2nd is a holiday, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I suspect it is. No, that doesn't look good. Can we go August 3rd? Does that work with people?
Works for me.
Merlin?
Good with me, Lauren.
Okay.
At 12:30.
At 12:30 on August, sorry, what did I say? 3rd? 12:30.
That's good for me.
Good. Bev? Denzel, are you back to work by then?
I hope so. I hope like hell I get her back. Get her
Okay, all right, okay. So that's great, thank you. And so the agenda for that one will be delegations and then questions and probably there will be some questions from the advisory committee here. So it's kind of two parts of it, I guess. What else would we like to do? Sorry, before I go on, I also want to turn this around the other way to Gabrielle and Tim. what can this group do for you guys? I mean, I think that's probably one of the key questions when I look at some of the other activities. So where is it that we can serve best from your perspective?
Well, we started with the existing OP, which has got, so many hectares designated. The recommendation that's in front of your group and council at the same time is to add about 20% more ag land than what we currently have. So if there's a place like Cedar Hill got left off the map, we'll go back and have a look at that and see why and what's going on, whether there's a reason for it. But if there's other areas that you think are excluded and you think they're excluded and you go, why you should be including them, that's where we want to do that ground truth and that field work and make sure that this makes sense on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know the municipality, but I certainly don't know it the way you guys do. Mark is in the same boat. Gabrielle's the same. I've been working in the area for a long time, but I'm certainly not going to know each farm or each piece of land. So there, the math works, and we know the math works. But the question becomes one, okay, if you've seen a piece of, if we draw the line around this, like in this shape, and you go, well, what happened to the back 50 of that one? Why isn't that included? That's really good land. Or there's 200 here that are missed. Why'd you miss that 200? Why didn't you score it better? That's the kind of things that we really need to look at, because how does it play out on the ground? Because if it doesn't make sense on the ground, that's where you have a hard time defending it. I think that's what Bev was trying to get to before, saying, got to make sense when you look at it.
Well, we are relying on our own knowledge of geography plus the council reps.
And I think your other reps can help us with that too. Each one of them brings their own special piece.
Yeah, I think coming from that perspective, is there anybody else we should be considering bringing in? Are there some major producers or anybody that might know some of the area that would actually spend time looking at something? I guess that's a big responsibility. Bev?
I think, sort of our own homework between now and then is, besides trying to think about who is some other good reps to bring in, is the whole, and I'm thinking of someone, who moves around a lot, who does custom spraying or custom baling or, in different areas. There's some of those people around, or, who rents a lot of land around, who's probably would be a good resource. But I think that it's really important to get those 250 hectare squares or whatever they are up, that everybody can see them, so we can all take a good look at it, and certainly make it a
Bev, you're frozen.
Okay, so it was Bev that went offline. Okay.
While we're waiting for Beth to come back, Lauren, one thing I'd love to see on that agenda for August is Bev had mentioned the community feedback that we've already received to the planning department. So if we could kind of have some of that feedback ahead of time, that we can, absorb it and kind of sift through it all, I think that would really help get us started.
We were in the middle of something that Bev was saying. I see she's just getting connected in.
Yeah, sorry, something happened. I just disappeared. Did you hear what I had to say, or do I need to say it again?
You need to repeat that.
If we don't freeze up again.
Hi, did you hear what I said, or do I need to talk again?
This is not good.
You're all froze.
Just Brenda, I did make a notation, so we'll put that on your next agenda, on the next agenda.
Great, thank you.
Maybe, but we need to go.
Paraphrase what Brenda said. I didn't hear her very well.
So, sorry, for the next agenda, we want to, one of the items is community feedback.
Yep.
That was received during the public consultation. Lauren, I think I'm going to suggest that we go ahead without Bev. And I know I'm very sensitive to
Yeah.
Marlon's time.
No, I agree. I agree. But I think, Bev, you're back again. Cynthia, I think we should quickly agree on what the agenda looks like for the next meeting before this all crumbles to pieces here, because it's having some problems at the time.
Yeah, and we certainly can, Lauren, you and I can work on the agenda when I come back on the 12th. Bev, you are frozen again. Lauren, I'm gonna suggest that maybe we can wrap the meeting up, and with the action item that you and I will work on the agenda. We've got
Okay.
action items. The committee members will get some names and email addresses for the next meeting, which will be August the 3rd at 12:30. And Lauren and I will work on July 12th. When I come back, we'll work on an agenda. Okay. And Lauren, I think you're frozen too. So I'm going to actually call the meeting to a close, if that's okay. If I have, I guess I have 3 members, if I can have a mover and a seconder. Okay, moved by Councillor Ferguson, second by Scott. On behalf of the committee, I want to thank JL Richards for attending, and certainly the information was very helpful, and the meeting's adjourned at 1:49 p.m. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Thank you. We'll touch base with everybody soon. Enjoy your
Thank you.
summer.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Dow.